8:37 on WMAL. This is the Grandy Group. Brian Neiman, Brian Wilson, Tori Clark in for Fred Grandy this morning, who will be back tomorrow, waiting for Rhee, former D.C. school chancellor, to chime in. But, it's an interesting article about what's been going on in Wisconsin in the fight that Scott Walker's having with these unions. And Rhee, who is a Democrat, has been trying to do a lot of the same things that Scott Walker is trying to do right now in Wisconsin.
And when you look back on the national stage, she was one of the first to take on the unions. Mm-hmm. And at the time, it was seen a little bit like only Nixon could go to China. But you look at what happened to her, and I am a huge, huge fan of hers, but I think to myself, wow, if all the support she had from Adrian Fenty, from the president to a certain extent,
yes, that's
all
right.
that support,
or at least at one point he had
at one point, but if she couldn't survive the political onslaught, then how can anybody else out there who really wants to reform education, which badly needs it?
Right, but the question is that why did Adrian Fenty not win re-election? Was it because of what was going on with the school system, or was it because Adrian Fenty was turned into a bad political candidate?
I think
down
that's
the road?
what it was, more than anything else.
Do we have Michelle? Do we have her on the air right now? No, we don't have her. Okay, I'm sorry.
Can I say I admire her greatly? Mm-hmm. And as somebody who's been in this town for a while and has watched the D.C. public school system just languish. They spend more money per student than just about any other school system in the entire country, which is proof positive that money is not the solution. Mm-hmm. Because if money were the solution, these would be the best educated kids in the country. Right. But so I admired her that she came in and she tried to do something about it. She tried to fix the situation. And what is really interesting to me right now is that Vincent Gray, the new mayor, for some reason decided he couldn't stand with Rhee, and that all fell apart, and maybe we can ask her about that.
We got her right now. Let's go ask her. Morning, Michelle, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, great. Well, we don't want to pick at old wounds, but why aren't you the head of DC schools today?
Well, my boss, Adrian Fenty, who was the one who brought me into DC, was not reelected, and I thought that the new mayor deserved the opportunity to have somebody that he had full faith and confidence in, leading the school district with him. So we sort of mutually decided that was the best thing for me to step aside.
Well, we don't want to waste a lot of time talking about this, but it is interesting to me now that we look at Vincent Gray, and the court ruling says all those teachers have to be rehired. He couldn't support you and couldn't stand by you, but yet he is supporting the actions that you took now by challenging that court ruling.
Well, the arbitrator's ruling, I think, is very clearly just wrong. We believed that we were absolutely right in making those terminations, and so I'm glad to see that he's actually sticking with that, because the last thing that we need is ineffective teachers in the classroom with kids.
Yes, you're right.
Michelle, I know there's some governors out there that are huge fans of yours. I know Chris Christie has been a big fan of yours for a long time. And we don't always hear about good things that are happening outside of Washington. Are you seeing things among some of those governors at the state or other local levels that gives you hope that there might be some meaningful education reform, if not nationwide, at least in certain parts of the country?
I am absolutely feeling incredibly hopeful right now. Not just Chris Christie, who's a wonderful governor, who's been very clear about the fact that he's going to put education reform at the forefront, but we've got governors like Rick Scott down in Florida, Bryce Sandoval in Nevada, Mitch Daniels and John Kasich in Indiana and Ohio, Haslam in Tennessee. These are people who are very, very much focused on how we can improve schools in those states. They are all supporting or introducing incredibly aggressive legislation in this legislative session against some of the policies and procedures that make absolutely no sense in education, like last in, first out policies for layoffs. And so I'm feeling very, very hopeful that the leadership that those governors are providing will actually begin to set the stage for dramatic school reform across the country.
When you look across the country, do you see a school district, and especially I'm talking about inner city schools, do you see any school district or state, city that is doing things the right way and say, hey, that should be the model as we move forward?
There's probably not one place that you can say is the model yet. I think Joel Klein in New York City did some incredibly positive things. I think as a state, the state of Florida under Jeb Bush did some great things as well. So I think you're seeing pockets of things that are working, but no jurisdiction yet that has gotten everything right in terms of, human capital, in terms of choice and competition, in terms of expenditure of dollars. I mean, those are the three areas that my new organization, Students First, is focused on. And though we see, like I said, pockets of good things happening, there isn't one jurisdiction who has done everything across the board that needs to be done.
Michelle, I just got back from Texas where they're having a big debate about education there, and they got a gap, some $9 billion gap, and they're trying to figure out how to fill it. And this is emblematic of what's going on around the country. There are many, many states that are facing similar situations, big gaps in education spending. They got to figure out how to spend it. And so how do you do that? How do you fix education at the same time that you're asking for tremendous cuts in the amount of money being spent on education?
Well, you have to remember that we have more than doubled the amount of money that we spend on education per pupil in the last 3 decades, but the results have gotten worse, not better. So money is not the end-all, be-all. Now, I think that when states are in a position where they are cutting education budgets for a number of years, while that's not a positive thing, at the same time, I think we can take advantage of those opportunities to revisit some of these age-old practices, again, that make no sense. So, for example, in states across the country, we are going to be seeing layoffs of teachers, which is bad enough, but it's made even worse by the fact that the way that we lay teachers off is by this last in, first out policy, which means the last person hired must be the first person fired, regardless of how good they are.
Well, explain that a little bit, Michelle, because I think some people, when they first hear last hired, first fired, go, oh, well, that seems fair. Explain a little bit why that's not good for kids.
It's not good for kids because of 3 reasons. The first is that research shows that when you fire people by seniority instead of quality, you end up letting go some of your most highly effective teachers in the district. That absolutely makes no sense for kids. The second reason is because when you fire the most junior teachers, you actually have to lose more teachers and more jobs because the junior teachers are paid the least. So in order to make up the budget deficit, you have to fire more of them. And clearly disrupting more classrooms is not positive for kids. And the last is that it disproportionately negatively impacts the lowest performing schools in the highest need areas because those are the schools that have the most new teachers. So by every measure, this is a policy that does not have positive ramifications for children. And when you ask the unions, they say, well, this is fairest for the adults. And they might be right that this is the right thing to do for the adults, but it is absolutely detrimental to children, and that's why we have to stop it.
All right, before we let you go, it's pretty easy to lay the blame on the feet of the unions and the teachers, but don't parents deserve a lot of blame in what's going on in our schools today, and how can you get the parents more involved?
Look, if you ask any parent in the country how they think layoffs should be done, they would tell you that they should be done by quality instead of seniority. In fact, there was a poll.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about layoffs. I'm not talking about layoffs. I'm talking about the parents being there for their kids and making sure that they get to school on time, making sure that they do their homework and things like that.
Should we be tiger moms?
Well, here's the thing. I mean, if in this country, if you've looked over the last few weeks even at different things that have happened across the country, you have depictions of parents who are trying to get their kids into high-quality charter schools in the Waiting for Superman movie. You have an example of parents in Compton, California, who tried to pull the parent trigger, a new law that allowed them to turn around a failing school in their community. And you have the mom in Akron who, falsified documents to get her kids into a better school. And in each of those cases, look at what happened to the parents. In the first case, we tell those parents, sorry, we don't have enough room for your kids at the high-quality schools. In the second case, we threatened and harassed those parents with deportation if they signed the petition. And then the third situation, we threw the lady in jail. So I don't think we are sending a message to America's parents that we want them more involved in the education of their kids. I think we're sending a message that says if we don't like how you're getting involved, then we're going to have these negative ramifications put down on you. I don't think we're sending the right message.